The lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
You're not grateful enough for what we've given you. Those were Trump's brutal words to President Zelensky, right before he torpedoed their joint press conference and left European allies stunned. The White House meeting descended into chaos within minutes as Trump echoed Russian talking points directly to Ukraine's leader's face. Meanwhile, Justin Trudeau is now frantically flying to London for a Ukraine defense summit where Canada wasn't even on the official guest list. What exactly happened in that room between Trump and Zelensky? And why is Trudeau suddenly desperate to align with Europe?
You're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long.
European powers instead of America. The diplomatic disaster signals a massive power shift that directly threatens Canada's security. The Oval Office disaster. Trump humiliates Zelensky in front of the world.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country.
What was supposed to be a diplomatic meeting aimed at fostering peace between the United States and Ukraine has descended into an absolute nightmare, leaving international observers stunned. The Oval Office encounter between Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky wasn't just tense. It was a complete diplomatic disaster that has sent shockwaves through international relations. When Zelensky arrived at the White House, he expected a professional discussion centered around a critical minerals deal that could help end Ukraine's devastating war with Russia. Instead, what unfolded was nothing short of a public humiliation campaign orchestrated by Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. The cameras were rolling as Trump unleashed a shocking verbal assault on the Ukrainian leader. With the world watching, Trump berated Zelensky with the kind of language that left diplomats speechless. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good and very strong. You're right now not in a very good position. The hostile tone only escalated as Trump continued his tirade, telling the wartime president, "You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position," and he happens to be right about it. This wasn't diplomatic discussion. This was a deliberate ambush designed to belittle Ukraine's leader on the world stage. As if Trump's behavior wasn't shocking enough, the former president proceeded to make wildly inaccurate claims about American aid to Ukraine. He asserted that the U.S. had provided a staggering $350 billion in assistance, a figure that's nearly 3 times the actual amount of approximately $120 billion.
We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank
president, $350 billion.
You voted
We gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and your
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about West?
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin.
This wasn't just a minor miscalculation. It was a fundamental misrepresentation of facts during a critical diplomatic meeting. The tension in the room became unbearable when Trump directly accused Zelensky of pushing the world toward catastrophe, saying, "You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III."
Mr. President,
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
what do you
You're
speak about?
gambling with
What do you
World
speak
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's
with
back
all
to you,
respect to your
far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No. In
These alarming statements didn't just undermine Ukraine's position. They directly echoed the threatening rhetoric that Vladimir Putin has used against Ukraine since the beginning of the invasion. What makes this encounter even more disturbing is how Trump repeatedly shut down Zelensky's attempts to explain Ukraine's position. Every time the Ukrainian president tried to speak, Trump cut him off, saying, "No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble." This pattern of interruption made it painfully clear that this wasn't a discussion between equals. It was a one-sided verbal assault. The confrontation became so heated that the planned joint press conference had to be canceled entirely. The critical minerals deal that was supposed to be signed, the very purpose of the meeting, remains unsigned, further highlighting the utter failure of this diplomatic engagement. Perhaps most alarming was Trump's decision to parrot Russian propaganda points directly to Zelensky's face. He told the Ukrainian leader, "Your people are dying, and you're running low on soldiers." Statements that could have been taken directly from Kremlin talking points, all while simultaneously insisting that Ukraine couldn't possibly win without American support. International relations experts have reacted with shock and dismay, with many describing the encounter as one of the most humiliating diplomatic failures in recent American history. What should have been a constructive meeting between allies has instead revealed a fundamental shift in U.S. policy toward Ukraine, one that appears to prioritize Russian interests over those of a democratic ally under attack. Zelensky fights back. Ukraine's president refuses to bow to Trump's demands. While diplomatic experts were still reeling from the Oval Office disaster, Zelensky made a decision that has sent shockwaves through Washington's power corridors. When directly asked if he would apologize to Trump on Fox News, his forward response didn't just preserve Ukraine's dignity, it completely exposed the dangerous game Trump is playing with global security. In a stunning display of political courage, Ukraine's president walked straight into the lion's den, appearing on Trump's favorite network, where most expected him to grovel for American support.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect the president and I respect American people. And if, I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And
instead, Zelensky stood his ground with a clarity that left even Fox News hosts speechless. I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad, Zelensky declared when asked point blank if he owed Trump an apology. This simple yet powerful refusal to bend the knee has infuriated Trump's inner circle, who expected Ukraine's leader to capitulate after being publicly humiliated. Rather than cowering before Trump's demands, Zelensky strategically acknowledged that the meeting was not good for both sides, while simultaneously pivoting to express profound gratitude toward the American people. From the very beginning, during 3 years of full-scale innovation, you helped us to survive, he stated, drawing a clever distinction between Trump's hostility and America's historical support. What makes Zelensky's Fox News appearance so extraordinary isn't just his refusal to apologize, it's his absolute rejection of Trump's pro-Putin narrative. While Trump returned to Mar-a-Lago, fuming about Ukraine's ingratitude, Zelensky calmly but firmly declared, "Americans are the best of our friends. Europeans are the best of our friends, and Putin with Russia, their enemies." This clear-eyed assessment of Russia as the aggressor directly contradicts Trump's increasingly pro-Kremlin stance, and it came straight from Zelensky's lips on the network Trump considers his home turf. The Ukrainian leader wasn't just defending his country, he was setting the record straight for millions of American viewers. But the most shocking aspect of Zelensky's Fox News counteroffensive was his refusal to accept Trump's vision of Ukraine's surrender. Instead of embracing Trump's push for a quick ceasefire that would legitimize Russia's territorial gains, Zelensky demanded real security guarantees. If not NATO, let's build NATO in Ukraine. This bold assertion represents Zelensky's understanding that any peace without security guarantees would leave Ukraine vulnerable to future Russian attacks. By stating this position on Fox News, he's effectively calling Trump's bluff on ending the war, exposing that the former president's peace plan would actually hand Putin everything he wants. Unsurprisingly, Trump's allies are furious. Political insiders report that Trump expected Zelensky to return to Ukraine with his tail between his legs, not to launch a media counteroffensive that exposes the flaws in Trump's approach. Experts note that Zelensky's refusal to apologize could strain U.S.-Ukraine relations, but his principled stand has simultaneously strengthened his position on the international stage. While Trump continues attacking the Ukrainian president, European leaders have rushed to show solidarity with Zelensky. This unexpected development has completely flipped the narrative. Instead of isolating Ukraine, Trump's bullying has accelerated European plans to support Ukraine independently of America. The Ukrainian president's poised, dignified response to Trump's aggression demonstrates precisely why he's earned global respect. When faced with an American president echoing Russian talking points, Zelensky refused to be intimidated into accepting Russian occupation of Ukrainian territory just to secure Trump's approval. European defense officials are now working overtime to develop contingency plans that don't rely on American support. A fundamental reshaping of the Western security alliance, triggered by Trump's pro-Putin stance and Zelensky's refusal to surrender Ukraine's sovereignty. Trudeau's desperate diplomacy. Canada rushes to London after being snubbed. The reshaping of Western security alliances has left Canada dangerously isolated, with Trudeau forced to beg for a last-minute invitation to London's Emergency Defense Summit. Justin Trudeau's desperate diplomatic scramble reveals a nation caught in a perfect storm, snubbed by traditional allies while facing unprecedented threats from the incoming Trump administration. In a stunning diplomatic oversight that speaks volumes about Canada's diminishing global influence, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer initially organized this crucial European Defense Summit without even bothering to invite our Prime Minister. This wasn't just an administrative error, it was a deliberate exclusion that forced Trudeau to make frantic behind-the-scenes calls to secure his place at the table. The London gathering has transformed from a routine security meeting into an emergency response to Trump's pro-Putin stance, with Ukrainian President Zelensky flying directly from his Washington humiliation to rally European support. And where was Canada in these initial plans? Nowhere to be seen. Intelligence expert Steve Hewitt didn't mince words about the significance of this diplomatic slap in the face, saying Trudeau's last-minute inclusion represents a sort of political statement in many ways. There's a huge amount of symbolism around this meeting. The symbolism is clear. Canada is now viewed as an afterthought in global security discussions. But the humiliation doesn't stop there. When Trump openly threatened to annex Canada during his campaign, Britain's Prime Minister Starmer, supposedly our closest ally after the US, failed to defend our nation's sovereignty. Hewitt called this silence very insulting to Canadians, exposing how quickly traditional allies will abandon us when their own interests are at stake. This summit marks a fundamental pivot in Western security architecture, as more than a dozen European nations, plus NATO and European Commission, leaders gather to forge defense plans that don't rely on American support. France, Germany, Italy, Denmark, the Netherlands, they're all creating a new European security framework, while Canada desperately tries to secure a seat at the periphery. The stakes couldn't be higher for Trudeau, who's walking a treacherous diplomatic tightrope. His social media support for Zelensky represents what Hewitt described as a clear positioning against Trump, an incredibly risky gamble, given Canada's overwhelming economic dependence on the United States. Trudeau now finds himself in perhaps the most perilous position of any G7 leader. While European nations can band together for mutual protection, Canada sits geographically isolated, sharing the world's longest undefended border with a superpower whose incoming president has openly mused about invasion. The parallels to Britain's post-Brexit isolation are striking. As Hewitt pointed out, both nations now find themselves cut adrift from their traditional security frameworks. But at least Britain has geographic proximity to its European partners. Canada stands alone, with 90% of its population clustered within 100 miles of a border, controlled by an increasingly hostile neighbor. Trudeau's desperation to attend this summit reveals the terrifying new reality facing Canada. When European powers gathered to create a Trump-proof security architecture, their initial instinct was to exclude us entirely. Only after frantic diplomatic overtures was our Prime Minister grudgingly added to the guest list. This isn't just about Ukraine anymore. It's about Canada's fundamental security in a world where our greatest ally is transforming into our greatest threat. The summit's real purpose is becoming clear: to create a new Western security framework that treats America as a potential adversary, rather than a reliable partner. For Canadians, this represents a seismic shift in our nation's strategic position. Since World War II, we've relied on American protection while enjoying the benefits of proximity to the world's largest economy. That arrangement is now evaporating before our eyes, leaving Trudeau racing to London to secure alternative security. Partnerships with European powers, who are primarily focused on their own survival. The coming days in London will determine whether Canada can secure meaningful commitments from European allies or whether we'll be left truly alone, caught between Trump's America and a European continent fighting for its own survival. The fallout from the Trump-Zelenskyy debacle has unveiled a terrifying new reality for Canada's national defense. Security experts are now sounding the alarm that without American protection, Canada faces devastating vulnerabilities that could leave our nation defenseless against foreign threats. The situation is even more dire than anyone imagined. Analysts warn that Canada must now frantically seek stronger European alliances to fill the massive security void left by Trump's America First policies. This isn't just about diplomatic awkwardness. It's about Canada's very survival in a hostile new world order. The coming weeks represent the most critical period in Canada's modern security history. Without immediate action to safeguard our resources and strategic interests, experts caution that Canada risks nothing less than complete economic and geopolitical subjugation. Trudeau's desperate London mission isn't just about saving face, it's about preventing Canada from becoming Putin and Trump's next victim in their dangerous new alliance. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on the latest controversies, power plays, and global shifts, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell. The world is changing fast, and we'll be here to break it all down for you. See you in the next video.